As we've said many times on the program, the unemployment rate at 8.2% doesn't reflect the number of people who have given up looking for work. One California lawmaker introducing legislation to include these people when the government reports the numbers each month. Time to bring out our panel. Al Lewis is a columnist for Dow Jones Newswires in Denver. Chris Wilson is a Republican pollster in Oklahoma City. And Monica Crowley is a radio talk show host. Chris, let's start with you. What do you make of this?
Well, I think after another month of seeing too few jobs created, yet seeing unemployment drop, we're recognizing that a statistic that people count on to mean something is becoming meaningless. And it's really scary that we're having to have this conversation. It shows that what the Obama administration, their policies have done is taken into a horror show of a permanent economy of stagnation, which is what smart economists will tell you happens when the government gets too involved in picking winners and losers. And again, that's exactly what's happening, where we've seen this happen before, but usually you go into recession recovery mode. But now we're stuck in a permanent recession with sustained stagnation. And so a statistic that we can look at every month that we count on to mean something doesn't mean anything because, as you said, people have stopped looking for work, they've given up looking for work, and now we've got to find a new way to reflect that, which is to go back and take those people who have given up looking for work and count them again in the unemployment statistic.
Well, I think what we got going on here is the slowest recovery that we've ever seen, possibly. And that's what's so frustrating about this, is we can't seem to get any traction. When you look at this potential legislation, Monica, what do you think?
Well, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's long overdue, Jerry, because, as we were talking about people who have dropped out of the workforce, who have given up looking for work, but also keep in mind that the U3 number, the 8.2%, doesn't take into account people who are underemployed, working a lot less than they would otherwise be doing. So to have a more accurate picture, I think, might be politically toxic for President Obama, for any other president who is going to have to deal with a more accurate number. But I think to give the American people a better view of what's really happening, look, they know what the actual economic picture is. They're living this economy on the ground every day. You have, 13 million people unemployed, so they know what it is. Also, the idea that we should have an unemployment number that factors in the shrinking labor participation rate.
Absolutely. Let's get Al in here, because I know Al follows this very closely.
You ever see that movie, Spinal Tap, where they say, this one goes to 11? I mean, what's the difference if it's 10 or 11? It's high. There's a lot of people who are unemployed. We've been counting it this way since 1994, so all these partisan comments strike me as a bit odd. But I do agree with this legislation. I would like them to see people who are so discouraged that they drop out of the housing market, because guess what happens when they become encouraged? They come back in, and then they're counted the wrong way again.
Well, I think all the government numbers are suspect in some way. Let's talk about the jobs picture, obviously, but also President Obama's approval ratings. They were slightly up in March. According to Gallup, 46% of Americans approved of his performance last month. April shaping up to be a good month for him. Daily tracking has the president topping 50% for the first time since the death of Osama bin Laden. What do you make of this, Monica?
Well, I think the spin on the 8.2% unemployment number, which we just talked about, is sort of bogus anyway, but the White House was able to put a pretty effective spin on that. And as we all know, jobs in the economy are the #1 and #2 issues for the American people. But I don't think it's going to last. I mean, we have seen spikes like this with the president before. They've proven to be very short-lived. So we'll see how this shakes out once the American people have a real chance to absorb that there really is no actual job creation of any kind of import happening.
Gas prices, right,
gas
Al?
prices too.
What do you say about that, Al?
I don't know what Obama did last month, but it's nice to see that he's rising in the polls. Maybe it's a reflection that none of the Republican contenders have done anything either. I think that these polls are irrelevant. What's going to matter is what his approval rating is in November. And I think that between now and November, a lot can change in our economy and in our jobs picture. That'll affect him a lot.
You just don't know. Chris, what do you say?
Well, it's amazing how these conversations tie directly together. Is driven by the unemployment rate. And although it's not much of a bump, it's enough that does make a difference for him. If you continue to see it track up, he's in much better shape for re-election. In the same way that if you see the unemployment rate track down, he's in better shape for re-election. But when it gets down to it, this is really more about him not doing anything lately. He has been pushing policies, has been in ceremonial situations, and that helps his numbers overall. And that's why you've seen him get this bump.
All right, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will soon announce whether they will allow principal reductions on the mortgages they back. According to the FHFA, the two mortgage giants will decide whether to essentially bail out underwater homeowners. Now, the agencies have resisted this in the past, or at least leadership has, saying it's too expensive for taxpayers. Al.
Well, you know, they bailed out the banks. Why not bail out the homeowners, too? I hate all these moral hazard arguments when they're applied to actual people versus institutions that were too big to fail. On the other hand, I definitely think it's rewarding failure. But you know what? They're going to have to do something about these falling home prices. You cannot sell your house in a lot of situations unless you can get approval from the bank for a short sale.
But Chris, I mean, you look at bailout of homeowners and actually writing down principal, and who pays for that? At the end of the day, a lot of the banks are going to pay for that. Fannie and Freddie are going to pay for that. I got to tell you, regular Americans who are paying their mortgage each and every month just don't like this idea.
Well, and that's who ends up paying for it is regular Americans. These are government institutions, no matter how you want to guide it with legalese. And when the taxpayers are going to pay for the government picking winners and losers, everybody loses in the long run. And that's why we get back to my point with your first question about the economy. We are in a permanent state of stagnation here with this administration's policies. And as long as they continue to allow different government agencies to pick winners and losers, we're not going to get out of this.
Yeah, and Fannie and Freddie are us. I mean, it's every American taxpayer. We make up Fannie and Freddie, and we're going to end up footing the bill for this. Look, there's an argument to be made, and it's a tough one to be making politically, and that's why you see so few politicians do it. Mitt Romney made it and got in a heap of trouble. But it's a heartless free market solution, which is the only way you're going to reset home prices, get them down, get them to their natural level now, is to let the market clear out, and that means no more bailouts.
All right, let's move on to the private sector. What happens if you run an iconic American company into the ground? At Kodak, you get bonuses. The company is seeking permission to pay about 300 executives $13.5 million in bonuses to persuade them to stay with Kodak through the bankruptcy process. Al, what do you say?
You know what? I think this is a positive sign. I mean, they're only proposing to give out like $45,000 or $75,000 in retention bonuses. This is nothing. No self-respecting banker would stay at a bankrupt organization for this price. So maybe this is a good thing.
Monica.
And let's keep in mind, we're not talking about taxpayer money here, right? The private company, they're using their own funds to do this. If they want to do it and if they get approval, then God bless them. Free market.
You know, it's without knowing the inner workings of Kodak, it's tough to respond. It's easy to take shots at Kodak for wanting to pay money to their executives when they're in bankruptcy. But at the same time, it's unfair to the collectors. But if they need to keep those executives to survive as a company, I mean, Kodak would be a horrible company to see just completely dissipate. And they're sort of an iconic American company, and I'm rooting for them. And I hope if this is what they need to make it, then they should do it.
Well, it's been a long, struggling road for that company. Thanks, Monica, Chris, and Al. Great job, everybody. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you.